Well,
Never fails. Never fails.
good evening and welcome to Explorers Seekers of the Truth, episode 33. Of course, I am Chad Charlesworth, and as always, I'm joined by my best friend and co-host, Lesson Cabbage. So how are you doing tonight, Les, besides our intro music not playing?
Oh, no, it played. It just tried to play again.
Oh, I didn't hear it at all.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I didn't hear it. That's why I was sitting here.
Piece of crap phone. Oh, well, anyway, I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. I do appreciate it. I guess before we get into the meat and potatoes of tonight's topic, I'll go through the usual. You can reach us at our website at www.explorersgroup.com. We're on Twitter at Explorers Group. And obviously here on Facebook, facebook.com/Explorers Group. We're on iTunes and Instagram and all those other things, all at Explorers Group. Check us out. So, yeah. Oh, and we're on YouTube, too. You can get to our YouTube channel through our website. So check that out as well.
And as always, if you find anything interesting, you're more than welcome to share it, send it around. We don't mind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So tonight's topic is we're going to talk about a couple of flying cryptids.
Mm-hmm.
We'll look into several different stories and legends involving flying cryptids. Some are more on the dinosaur end of the spectrum, and some are more towards the paranormal end or side of the spectrum.
Right. Now, as most of you know, we don't go after the easy targets or the more commonly told or discussed cryptids. We like to go after kind of the lesser known cryptids, and tonight we're going to be talking about a few of those lesser known flying cryptids and folklore legends in our discussion tonight. And we've already covered the Jersey Devil and the Mothman, so we wanted to pay homage to these, lesser known creatures.
So the first creature that we're going to discuss tonight is the Lone Pine Mountain Devil.
Mm-hmm.
And this is said to be a winged carnivore of North American folklore. It's considered to be the West Coast relative of the Jersey Devil.
Oh, that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, one of the early accounts described by a priest described them as winged demons sent from the depths of hell.
Ooh.
It's also known as the California Mountain Devil. It's another name given to it through the folklore. And it's said to be like a bat-like legendary creature or cryptid. So, bat-like, that kind of starts to lead you down a path. But
hey, Michelle. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off.
And it's believed to inhabit the wilderness and mountain regions of the America Southwest and northern Mexico. And to kind of give you an idea of the description of it, it is usually described as a large, furry, multi-winged creature with razor-sharp talons and multiple layers of deadly venomous fangs, which is also something it shares with another flying cryptid with the venomous fangs would be the Ropin, which we won't be talking about tonight because I heard a very good, thorough debunking of the whole Ropin legend, and I kind of have to agree with the guy.
Cool. Well, before we go on, I do have an interesting artist rendering of what the Lone Pine Mountain Devil looks like. I'll bring it up here for everybody. Look at how cute he is. Look at that guy. Yeah, most of the descriptions that we had found in our research of this lesser known fella is the double winged, as you see there. So it's actually, I guess, 6 appendages, more like an ant, more like an insect. But this is what I was able to find that best kind of describes. There was other pictures, but I thought this one, I guess, was the best. So how sad is that? Yeah. But that's it. The Lone Pine Mountain Devil.
Yeah.
The picture of.
Yeah, a nice little cartoon of.
Yeah, that's all I can find.
Yeah, well, that actually is because since 1928, there hasn't been any significant or credible sightings of the creature,
Mm-hmm.
and it's never been. There's never been a photograph or even caught on film.
Obviously, yeah, if it was back that far.
Yeah, which is it's kind of interesting when you look at the double wing
Mm-hmm.
idea. Now I'm no expert in anything, so when I look at something with double wings, especially like a bat-like or bird-like creature,
Mm-hmm.
the double wing doesn't make sense.
Why is that?
Well, it would be twice as heavy because of the extra wings,
Mm-hmm.
and the wings, like for them to flap, they'd have to almost flap in unison. So two would be going at a time, up, down, up,
Mm-hmm.
down. So it just really doesn't make sense for something to have two sets of wings. Now, could that be a misidentification? Somebody seeing something flying, and one set of wings is, it has one set of wings, but the way you catch it as it's moving at night, the image is kind of blurry. You don't have good light, and all of a sudden you think it had two sets of wings. It just,
Possible.
yeah, just thinking about it, a lot of this stuff when I look at it, I have to look at what is the advantage to having two sets of wings. What's the advantage of the body design? Because
Mm-hmm.
nothing in nature is going to continually reproduce a defect for its environment.
Well, nothing in modern nature, but the Microraptor uh, had a double wing kind of look to it. It was a flying dinosaur that had feathered wings on the arm appendages and the leg appendages. Uh, but I mean, that was how long.
Yeah. And when did they go?
And I think they went extinct. Oh god, late Cretaceous, I believe, or Cretaceous. I think, and I could be wrong, so don't quote me, but I'm pretty sure there's some sort of a gliding lizard that has membranes that, when stretched out, they could glide with basically what looks like four sets of wings. But I don't know. And we have a question: has it been reported to make a sound? I don't know. Like Chad said, nothing has been reported since 1928. But we haven't gotten through this whole topic, so there might be some reports of sound, but I don't want to give it away right away.
Yeah.
So keep listening.
And we're to give you an idea where they came up with the name for the Lone Pine Monster is it's a small town outside of a mountain range. It's called Lone Pine, California, and that's where the name comes from. So it's something geographic to that area.
It's creative.
Yeah, well, the New Jersey Devil. I mean,
yeah, there you go. It's true.
The Falk Monster.
Yeah, these people don't stretch for the names of these creatures.
Yeah. Now, one of the interesting things about it is the way it attacks its prey, or allegedly attacks its prey. It seems to attack the torso and head of the victims, usually going for more of the soft cartilage areas. And a lot of the alleged victims of the Lone Pine Monster, the meat is actually left to rot or for other animals to eat. So it's basically targeting the face, the torso, and then kind of moving off and letting the rest of it rot.
So that sounds more like it would be in as an act of self-defense rather than a predatory attack or an act of predation. You know what I mean? Like it's going to go after you. Like maybe you walked into its territory or maybe there was a family group or a nest, or I don't know what it would have. And it just felt like whoever the victim was a threat. It came down, attacked the soft areas where it could inflict the most damage most easily without having to use too much force or power to tear in and do critical damage. And maybe it just did what it needed to do enough to hurt you, to immobilize you, and then take off.
Yeah. Well, that's actually interesting that you kind of said it that way, because a lot of the true believers in this, in the existence of the Lone Pine Monster or the, Lone Pine Mountain Devil, is that it's a peacekeeper of sorts. It kind of only attacks people or animals that are destroying the natural elements of that region, and not really, almost sort of like that aren't helping with the regeneration of the forest. Because if you kind of think about the way it attacks, if it just does face and torso damage and leaves the rest of it to rot, well, what happens when things rot? The nutrients go back into the soil, the regeneration of the woods, the forest, of nature. So, you can kind of piece that theory together and kind of give it a little validity to where the attacks, how the attacks happen.
That's interesting.
Yeah, because I mean, it's not, even if it lets, say like people who are destroying the woods, some, they accidentally set a fire or their fire gets too big and they start, burning a lot of trees to keep their fire going through the night.
Yeah.
All of a sudden this thing attacks. It attacks the face, the torso, leaves other animals come and eat. Well, other animals eat that meat. They defecate. They fertilize the ground. So it's kind of, when you look at that type of attack,
like a protector of the forest kind of thing, almost.
Yeah, that's where a lot of the believers kind of put it, as it is a, forest protection,
like a forest guardian. Yeah. Well, like a lot of cryptozoological creatures kind of get that generic branding or title. Like Bigfoot, a lot of people think that they're the forest friends or the forest guardians or forest spirits, they call them, almost like the Pan from Greek mythology and whatnot. I believe it was Greek mythology. It was the faun was the spirit of the forest that protected the animals in the forest and so on and so forth. So all the kind of unidentified creatures kind of get that definition, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of them kind of, well, if you think about it, a lot of the folklore comes from more pagan beliefs. More nature-based belief systems, Native American, ancient Greek mythology, the Romans later stealing Greek mythology and renaming things. And, it's all coming from a more nature-based, so good things, there'd have to be a good and a bad in a lot of ways. So there are good things that protect the woods and nature, but then there's also the opposite end of that, and we're going to see another story a little bit later of creatures that are harbingers of,
impending
destruction, impending doom, and stuff like that. That are, a lot of times, Mothman and some other ones that have been kind of linked through years of alleged sightings to have been around all these disasters and, foretold these, catastrophes. Now, early settlers, began to spread these tales due to the fact of finding numerous, coyotes and bobcat carcasses, out in the rough desert and in the mountain wilderness in that, in that part of California. And, this monster kind of just takes up a name not, there's no, like, when we talked about like the Jersey Devil, where we could point to the Leeds family and, Ben Franklin, and that's where kind of that name kicks off. The Leeds Devil kind of kicked off from that point. This name kind of just is associated with it, but never really pinpointed to a person, in the newspaper giving it that name. It's just kind of, the settlers started calling it. It's the region where they were. The descriptions back then kind of get put on the demonic and devil side of the folklore, and it doesn't even really have a big Native American, association for that area.
Mm-hmm.
Like, there's not a lot of Native American legend about it, or, given to that area of, some kind of flying beast. Now, of course, there are Native American legends to flying, cryptids, basically.
Oh, God, yeah.
But sorry,
the lights keep dimming, and I'm so afraid that we're going to lose power again. I'm so damn tired of this. Hopefully we continue on, and I hope everybody could tune in too with the whole Comcast thing. With everybody losing their internet and whatnot. So always something. We should have had the show last night before Comcast crapped out.
Yeah, but you never know. I mean, Friday night's kind of fun. I have better energy on a Friday night.
Yeah, plus you don't have to get up so early for work the next day.
Yeah, that's the nice thing about it, is not getting up super early in the morning after doing the show. Because I don't mind when we do a show on Friday and we go late. Yeah, because I don't have to get up Saturday morning.
That's true.
Yeah, a lot of these early reports are kind of more or less folktale. They're not documented, because there's early stories of finding entire convoys of adventurers' families, gold prospectors, who had been murdered with their faces left unrecognizable and their torsos appeared to have been eaten clean to the bone. There's not a lot of documented evidence of this, though.
Well, I mean, that could all be left to Native American raids. They slaughtered the people traveling west. They left the remains. Scavengers picked them up. Next group coming through, they see this horrific, thing. They probably wouldn't think it was, other types of people that would do this. And, and a lot of them being, religious fanatics back then, right away they try and, pin it to some sort of a supernatural event. So,
yeah, I mean, I think if you look at, if you wondered upon bodies in, a relatively warm climate with natural bobcat, mountain lion, birds, bears, coyote, naturally, and wolves back then even, naturally occurring in that area. Well, if you think about it, soft tissue and stuff like that is easiest for small animals to pick at.
Right.
The body fills with gas when you die.
Mm-hmm.
So things will either they expand, they pop, or animals will eat their way into it.
Mm-hmm.
So now all of a sudden you found a body that could be laying out there for 2 or 3 weeks with the face tore up. Well, small, woodland creatures are going to eat the soft tissue of the face. Decomposition is going to lead to some of the other areas. Even some of the facial distortion would be from, decomposition.
Mm-hmm.
And of course now there haven't been, a lot of reported sightings since the 1900s. And of course, this is, kind of due to the influx of population in that area.
Mm-hmm.
Because you're looking at the areas of, Southern California, you're looking at like Los Angeles, San Diego, all those cities have kind of, grown up to, millions of people. And now
Right.
all of a sudden, there's lack of habitat and available space. So all of a sudden the stories go down.
That's true, because if you think California, that once it was populated, it grew rapidly. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, the expansion in that area was ridiculously fast.
Oh yeah, like
So,
some of those cities, within a couple years of founding, were moving up in the largest cities in America.
mhm.
Even back in the 1800s when they first started settling in California and stuff like that. Some of those cities, San Francisco, San Fran, by like the 1880s was already a major city.
Right.
And that was one city already in that part of California. So yeah, there's definitely a rapid growth, but there's also a lot of untouched mountainous desert land in those areas.
Mhm.
So it could be something along the lines of things like the New Jersey Devil. It's cited randomly, but not often, because there
Right.
are so many places for it to kind of blend into and disappear into and not be seen for a while.
Right. Right.
So there is this case in 1878,
Mhm.
and I'm sorry I got a little indigestion there. Back in 1878, there was a stagecoach train of Spanish settlers that disappeared in the Sierra Nevada mountains in Southern California. It was a group of 37 settlers, including men, women, and children, vanished without a trace for 2 months, after which their rotten corpses were discovered by a team of copper miners.
Can you imagine coming upon that? That'd be, ugh, Jesus,
Yeah,
horrifying.
yeah, and the smell must have been lovely.
No, I can imagine.
Basically, weeks had passed since their scheduled arrival at a mission about 110 miles north of San Diego, when a lone priest, Father Justice Martinez, approached the mission. He was weak, thirsty, and hungry. He had no horse and no supplies, only the clothing on his back and a journal. Upon questioning, the priest informed the others that while on his journey he had taken a vow of silence when confronted by the beast damned by the good Lord. The last entry in his journal was related to the disappearance of the Spanish convoy in the mountains. In it, he describes the settlers weary from crossing a cross-continent journey, taking part in a celebration to honor Saint Roderick. The celebration escalated into a riotous orgy. I kind of like that, riotous orgy. That would be a great band name.
Oh yeah.
And the settlers began to burn trees for heat and light as the party carried into the night, into dark hours of the night. The priest writes that he took refuge by himself in a small tent outside the convoy as he watched a winged demon swarm from the trees and attack the settlers. So I'm going to read his final journal entry. My God, they are all gone. The winged demon have arisen. What sin have they committed against each other and thy sacred earth? May the forgiving Lord not abandon their souls, which were taken from them in the depths of hell. And through the earthly fires of man, a sole tree remained on the mountain's peak. And the devil that spare me returned to his refuge of the lone pine on the mountain.
Mm. So that's how he got his name, or it got its name.
Well, or is that how the town got its name?
Maybe all of the above.
Yeah. And now you get into the 2000s. After years of decline, there's a sudden jump in mountain devil sightings. Now, if you think about it, basically from about 2003 to 2010, there's a very big rise in sightings of this creature. You kind of think about it, 2003 through 2010, that's also kind of the rise of the popularity of cryptozoology. It becomes more television friendly. It becomes more interactive. There's more information, more books being made, more TV shows, movies. So all of a sudden there is a jump.
Well, don't forget too that the internet had gotten a lot better around that time.
Except
chat rooms. Yeah, apparently not. Yeah, we're still back in the olden days. Hey, Cindy, thanks for joining in. But all the different groups, podcasts, different kind of things started to gain their popularity. And you're right. So there was a lot more communication with people around, and I mean, it could be one of those things where, like you said, cryptozoology and whatnot, it was starting to come up on the rise. People are talking about it. So maybe people are kind of digging to find the next most interesting piece of material. So, hey, I remember, hearing rumors about this, double-winged creature that, attacked all these people back in the 1800s. So we're going to start talking about that. And, how are we going to make it more interesting? Oh, we're going to have it. There's new sightings now. It's back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you're right. It could definitely be a popularity contest in a way.
Yeah. Well, you think about it, it could also be like it was a piece of town folklore, it was a piece of town history, but it wasn't until the socially acceptable, part of cryptozoology and the paranormal starts taking off that all of a sudden people start to embrace the legendary, Lone Pine Mountain Devil story and kind of, it could be paratourism, hoping to get people to come to that area. Not every legend and folklore story or cryptid generates a ton of money, but it doesn't hurt to try.
Right, of course, yeah. So where are we going next? South Carolina?
Well, I thought we were going to talk a little bit about the living pterosaurs.
Yeah. Let me find that. That's down in the bottom of my notes. Yeah. I was tasked. I'm going to be honest with everybody. I was tasked to find some information on living pterosaurs. And unfortunately, the only thing that I kept finding was this livingpterosaurs.com or whatever it was, and it's the same guy. And I don't know, I don't want to discredit or belittle anybody, but what he's trying to prove or pass off as evidence, and he's really trying to sell it, can be just written off so easily. But, I guess, there's been much speculation and, legends trying to support the existence of non-existent dinosaurs around the world, which is why we kind of wanted to get into the pterosaur thing. And there's some stuff that's out there. But, as we discussed in a previous show, that you can find on our website at www.explorersgroup.com. Check out the live shows page. We talked about the Michele mbembe, which is a supposed apatosaurus from the long-necked family, the sauropod family. And it's believed to still exist in the Congo River basin. And aside from the landlocked dinos, we're trying to focus to the sky sustained part with tonight's theme, but like I said, there wasn't really much out there. But throughout history, man has been writing tales of enormous winged beasts with wings that filled the sky when they flew, and some of them breathed fire. But ironically, these tales are not quarantined to one location. These stories and similar ones span the globe. And aside from the stories passed down through the ages by pen or artwork, there have been some supposed evidence surfacing in more modern times with photographic technology. And by recent, I mean like dating back to the 1800s, where people claim, they have photographic evidence proving these pterosaurs are not extinct. And here's some examples of these photographs. And again, like this is just some of the stuff that I was able to dig up. And I'll get into it. I'll bring one up as an example. So, stupid thing froze. Here we go. Here's one of the things that I had found that people are trying to pass off as a supposed pterosaur that was caught in the 1800s by a bunch of lumberjacks, I guess. People working in the lumber industry, and they found this. They strung it up. The problem is a lot of these old photographs, people are finding the originals, and I mean, something like this is easily photoshopped. Easily photoshopped. So I have a hard time believing in that. And I guess people, they try and make it look old so that way, it couldn't have been fake being that old. And they're like, there's a gentleman, Jonathan Whitcomb, who is a cryptozoologist and self-proclaimed modern pterosaur expert, who believes this photograph, I'll bring it up here, he believes this to be absolutely genuine. And again, I don't mean to belittle or tarnish this man's reputation, but being a professional in the field of graphic arts and photography for the last 20 years, I could tell you these are not hard to produce. Fakes like this. There's a video with him trying to break down this, and he goes on and on and on about drag marks and look at the fingers and this and that. The aging or the antiquing on the film or the photograph is very easy to reproduce in Photoshop. Simply put a grunge layer over top of it, and your picture looks 150 years old. Change the coloration, give it a little of that sepia look to it, gives it age. He was saying about how, the beak is resting on a prop that the man has his foot on, and his foot's over top of that. No, the guy's foot was probably on that stump, and then they just photoshopped the bird on to make it look like his foot was on the beak and forgot to take the back half of it off, because a lot of these are really sloppy, and a lot of these hoaxed images, the more I dig in them, they're easily hoaxed. And quite honestly, if you really look at this picture, it looks like a bunch of people with reenactment clothing. It doesn't even look to be that old if you really look at the people and the seams and everything of their clothing. There was another one, I don't have the actual picture though, but there was another one that was modern reenactors that tried to replicate this, and it wasn't too far off. I mean, obviously you could tell it was more fake. There wasn't a lot of effort put into that one, but seriously, I could reproduce something like this within 15 minutes easily. And I think this guy is kind of getting into the I might be misrepresenting someone, so I do apologize in advance, but I believe it was M.K. Davis, who was going over the Patterson-Gimlin film and over it and over it. And hey Cleo, thanks for joining in. Sup? But he's going over and over and over and over that video to the point where he started seeing all this bizarre stuff, bone clasps in the hair, braids, and it's carrying a stick. It's got this, it's got that. It's one of those situations, the more you look at something, the more things are going to start popping out, whether they're there or not. And I unfortunately think that this is one of those situations, because there's a lot of things on here that I could see that's like, oh, it was a quick job. They probably just superimposed some of the things and masked out other things and this, that, and he says he knows Photoshop and he's worked with it, but I don't know how long ago he worked with it. But this stuff could be done very easily, very quickly. So again, I can't. And one of the things that he has stated is that this picture was in a book from the 1950s. I don't know that for sure. He couldn't produce the book. I can't produce the book. But even still, if it were, they could have made it. I mean, it doesn't look that detailed. And all you have to do, and all the images I found of this image in particular were so compressed. They were such a low-quality JPEG. And a lot of people, a lot of hoaxers will do that on purpose, so you can't see a lot of the detail, so they can more easily cover up their mistakes. So if the only image you have is so many pixels by so many pixels, you're not going to easily pick out what's wrong with it. But okay. Another example. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Let me have a minute with this here, please.
Sure.
First of all, easily debunkable. Look at the size of the soldiers posing around this.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It's supposedly a Civil War era photo.
Mm-hmm.
They would have had to have been four of the largest boys in whatever regiment they were part of, because they're about 30 pounds heavier than the average person was back then, each of them. Mm-hmm. If not, the one in the back with no kepi on has to be probably at least 220 pounds, which would have been gigantic for the 1860s.
Mm-hmm.
They're also all posing with their bayonets on their rifle. There'd be no reason to do that. They didn't stab it. What it looks like to me is several reenactor photos. And notice how all the rifles are turned so you can't actually see the breech and barrel on them. They're all stocked to you. Do you notice that?
What would that? Yeah.
Well, I could identify the gun time frame and if it's original or replica, if I could see all that stuff.
I think it'll bring us back up on here. Or do you want me to? I guess I could put it back up on full broadcast.
Also,
whatever.
Also, the guy who, and I'm not criticizing anybody's belief system here, but Jonathan Whitcomb
mm-hmm.
is a young earther who has tried to pass off the ropin in, I believe it's Papua New Guinea. It's another flying cryptid.
Uh-huh.
And every description of the ropin that he gives is based on old drawings and representations of pterosaurs.
Mm.
The bodies are incorrectly proportionate. They have features of several different early representations of pterosaurs that have been shown to not be correct, or the fact that the pterosaurs that they found with these body types were not flying. They were ground dwelling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so
more gliders than anything.
Well, not even that. They were more of just ground dwelling. They didn't fly at all. They just happened to be built along the pterosaur body types and stuff like that.
Okay.
You know, so this is somebody who already has questionable credibility. You know, because of things like the ropin, where there is no, you know, there's no description that fits and anatomically fits what he claims it can do.
Uh-huh.
So
that's why I didn't really go into too much detail with this one, because now one of the many things I love about you, brother, is you always find the nitty gritty with topics, and I love the fact that you find that further research. I got into that video, and what he was trying to pass off just on my expertise, I'm like, no. I actually almost felt sorry for him, the way he was trying to pass it off as real. I'm like, wow, you really think that? I'm like, I felt sorry for him. I just passed it off as, well, he's an older gentleman, and maybe he just doesn't realize how easily things could be done these days, and I just kind of chalked it up as that. And I didn't even feel it warranted any further investigation, because I was like, you know what? This dude's got his little thing going on. I mean, if he's happy, I'm happy for him, but there's no validity. And the fact that you pointed out with the weight of, you're right, because I was actually going through real images from the Civil War, and you're right, every single image, excuse me, the soldiers looked like coat racks with the uniforms hanging on them. They were so damn thin and gangly because most of them physically walked hundreds, if not thousands, of miles back and forth to the different battles and whatnot, and their rations were meek, and even still, most of them ate a hell of a lot more healthy. Excuse me, my throat's clogging up. They ate their diets were a lot better than people nowadays. Now, granted, they were still heavy people back then, but they were usually wealthy and could afford to eat like pigs. And because they were wealthy, most of them probably weren't in the war. And if they were high ranking and they weren't really in the thick of it. Yeah. But your common foot soldier or infantry or grunt, they were sick. They were gangly. They were pushed to the brink of life. And I didn't even think about that. And that's what I love about you, is you always, and especially when it comes to the Civil War, you always find those pertinent things. Like I said, when he started talking about Photoshop and his claims, I'm like, oh boy, I didn't even want to go any further.
Yeah.
But the fact that you even pointed out that extra stuff is just even that much better. Well,
you got to think that during the Civil War, an average day's march was 20 to 25 miles a day.
Mm.
And you got to think, if you're walking 20 to 25 miles a day, you are not going to, well, first of all, food was very limited. Your rations were, hardtack, stuff like that, water. So you weren't eating big meals if you were walking 20 miles a day. And so you wouldn't be carrying around 220 pounds of body weight.
Right.
You were marching into the hot parts of the year. You weren't in a wool uniform. Also, the other thing that kind of gets me about that photo, and I just noticed it after you took it, as you were taking it down from the screen, they're all carrying sidearms. They're all carrying pistols.
Mm-hmm.
Not the most common thing, unless they were all officers and wore kepis, which would be odd that they all had sidearms, rifles, and that type of uniform.
Mm-hmm.
Sidearms weren't issued to everybody. Not every soldier got a pistol. So I would really have to do my research on where they're claiming that was taken, and to see if the soldiers in those areas were issued those type of sidearms. But I just saw that as you were taking the photo down, I saw that they all had holsters on their hip, which was very uncommon.
And another thing too is just the way their faces are. It's too modern. Like, if you ever looked at what are they called? The tin type. The photographs, tin type. If you ever look at a true original tin type photo, the people look dead because they physically had to hold their expression and their pose for quite a long time in order for that to properly expose, because the most insignificant or subtle movement would blur the image, and the image would have to be then shot again. And it's a whole process. It's not like now where it's just like, and actually a snapshot or what do you call it? Oh Jesus, it's escaping me now. A candid photo, if you will. Candid photos are a new thing. where you're happy, you're catching things in the moment, you're capturing life. That's not how it was when photography first started. Photography was more or less just documenting people. They were just portraits. It was capturing the face. You know what I mean? It wasn't capturing moments in life, because technically they couldn't. But it was they had to basically stay frozen for a certain amount of time. And to me, every time I look at those old photographs, the people, they look dead. They just don't look. They look lifeless. Mm-hmm. I mean, there were post-mortem photography done back then, where you would actually get your photograph taken with a deceased loved one, and that was very common throughout the Victorian era. But your typical photography back then, it was a completely different look. These guys are there's too much life in their face. Like they don't have that frozen look. They're too relaxed.
Well, it reminds me when you said that about a million ways to die in the West. That joke about there's a guy smiling in the photo, he must be crazy because nobody smiles in the photo. It takes 30 minutes to take a photo.
Exactly. Yeah. That's my point. Yeah, because because to smile, you're using muscles. To frown, you're using muscles. To stay natural, it's easier to hold that position for a long period of time.
Now, one of the things is, especially with like that photo, is what I was saying too about credibility of the presenter. Mm. He has a goal in mind. He has clearly stated what this goal is: to disprove evolution. Mm. So, there you have it. When somebody comes forth with my goal is to disprove a scientific theory or a scientific law or any of that, and then starts presenting evidence, it's already kind of skewed, because he's going to see what he needs to see to present
to try and convince people.
Yeah. So, yeah, a lot of photos that get passed around and stuff like that, to me, like, it is, and I'm not an expert, like I said earlier, in anything. I can take a pretty picture, but I'm not a good photographer. I don't know how to use Photoshop. I can barely use Microsoft Paint, But I can see things in those photos. Like the way the guy's foot was positioned on what would be the beak just seemed odd to me. Like it seemed like somebody standing with maybe their foot up on a stool when the original photo was taken, and then they were put on a picture of this pterosaur laying on the ground,
right?
And all of a sudden you were just superimposed over it,
right? Right.
Somewhere my sister has a picture of her with Michael Jackson. Mm. It's a superimposed. It was a cardboard cutout of Michael Jackson, and they superimposed your photo with him. She's never met Michael Jackson. Mm-hmm. But I can tell the difference when I look at something like that and then look at that photo we're looking at. It kind of does just have so many elements that are wrong with it, from uniform, from body type, from weapons, to it just looks like his foot is hovering over a background of a pterosaur laying on the ground.
Yeah.
And I'm sure even if you really research the pterosaur, lines of, pterosaurs and stuff like that, that body probably is not a modern representation of what they have found over the years to, redefine the bodies and what the bodies were for. You know what I'm saying? Like,
there's not here. Plus, that particular variant of or species of pterosaur or pterodactyl, I believe it was larger than like a single engine plane,
mm-hmm.
and that looks quite a bit smaller. Now, granted, maybe it was a young one. I'm not going to get into that argument, but you know what I mean. There's a lot of things that just kind of disprove.
You forgot. You didn't say You said pterodactyl wrong.
The pterodactyl?
It's a pterodactyl.
Yeah.
It's
No,
gotta
it's
be
a pterodactyl.
Yes, I don't know why there's a P in that word. Or pterosaur, in fact, why there's a P there. It should be a pterosaur.
Right.
Drives me nuts.
Yeah. But
Silent
another...
letters.
Yeah, right? But another kind of example, I guess, is you have this picture here, which I'm not going to spend too much more time on this because I don't think it warrants it. But you have these guys. It's an old photo, real grainy and whatnot. And again, you could degrade a photo like that quite easily. But it's got some kind of a pterosaur-looking thing with its head tilted backwards there in the middle. But then you have this where you have the original side-by-sides. There's the hoax one on the left, then on the right is the original image, and there is nothing there. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So I don't... I tell you, especially doing what I do, when I see a lot of this stuff, it's like it's so easily manipulated. And I wish I could bring pictures more easily onto this, and I didn't add it because we have to upload pictures to Facebook. Then once we get into BeLive, we have to pull them one by one off of Facebook into the BeLive lobby. It's a pain in the ass. But I took a picture. My wife and I, back when we first started dating, we were at a supposed haunted church, and as kind of an experiment we wanted to do to kind of prove to people that you don't even need Photoshop to alter a photograph, because a lot of people are like, oh, well, this is the original. It's unaltered. No Photoshop. This is the original. Well, if you kind of know your ass from your elbow with a camera, all you have to do, especially for night shots and to create a spooky picture, all you have to do is slow your shutter speed down. For instance, it was the front of a church. I'll find it and post it on our Facebook page for everybody if you give a crap. I sat on a bench in front of this church. There was cool lighting in the background. It was just the perfect setup. I put my camera on a tripod. I set the shutter to, I think it was like 30 seconds or something like that. And I sat there for maybe 10, 15 seconds. Then I got up and walked away. And all what was left on the final product was the front of the church and a see-through version of me sitting on this bench that looked like, you guessed it, a ghost. And then there was another test that I did. There was a Boy Scout building, and any of my local friends will know what.
Don't talk about what you did with those Boy Scouts. Legal in most states.
No, I said any local friends know where I'm talking about. If anybody knows the legend of Matthias Schombacher on the opposing side of Hawk Mountain in Berks County, there's a Boy Scout meeting building. Supposedly that's haunted. There's a lot of ghost stories of that area. And again, as a test, I set my tripod up. I stood in front of the doorway of the little meeting house, set the exposure for a long exposure. And as I left, I walked more slowly out of frame. And what that did is created a trail. So a lot of these ghost pictures that people capture have that trailing and what? Oh no! I just took the shot and this one. Well, it could. And again, I'm not discrediting anyone because I've seen a lot of ghost pictures that I really couldn't explain. So there's a lot of good ones out there, but there's a lot of them that even made me scratch my head, but could be easily replicated. But the reason why I kind of believe them is because most of them I was involved with, and I know for a fact that these people really didn't know how to do that. But my point is, Photoshop or no Photoshop, there's always a way to make a hoax. So again, that's why I didn't do too much with pterosaurs. I'm pretty sure Ken Gerhard has a book with, and I think pterosaurs are in it. Unfortunately, I wasn't lucky enough to buy that book yet. So maybe when I get it, I can read a little bit about what Ken has in his books, because I really enjoy his work, and I think he's an honest, straightforward person, and he's only going to relay, what he hears and what he could, find as fact. So hopefully he'll have some better stories. Some of the things that I did find as well. Speaking of Hawk Mountain, I some local legend, I guess, of the pterosaur. And again, I'm not going to take too much time on this, but a story that I heard growing up is there is a cave system between the two cuts of the mountain at Hawk Mountain outside of Berks County, and people referred to them as dragons, but other people referred to them as pterosaurs or some sort of prehistoric-looking bird that would fly in and out of these caves and go, because one of the big things at Hawk Mountain is it's in the perfect migratory path of a lot of raptors, eagles, hawks, you name it. It is just the coolest place, and there's a lot of paranormal and in a way cryptozoological stories that kind of spawn from out there. It's a very, the whole Xville area is very, hey Jennifer, is very kind of creepy if you've ever driven through it. I love going through there just for the creep factor. But anyways, there is that story where there's these pterosaurs or dragons that fly in and out of the cave systems up on that mountain, and they fly around with the different birds of prey up there, which is kind of cool. Another thing that I had found, and I'm sure you all have seen it, it's this video, and I want to say it's from North Carolina, and from what I found, the person telling the story is in some way has been either interviewed or in some link to that guy that we were talking about, that Whitcomb. So again, the validity is way, way, way low. But if you see this video of a supposed pterodactyl or pterosaur flying around, anybody who owns a drone, whether it be a good one or a cheap one, the way this thing just kind of, there's no flapping. Now, it could be soaring on a thermal lift up there, but if you watch it, it's very stiff, it's very rigid, it kind of dips and turns, and it looks like it's a modified drone to fool people. I mean, we've all seen the videos with people that attached like the Grim Reaper to a drone and it flies after people. So, and that's a drone with loose fabric hanging around, and that'd be difficult to not get it stuck in the propellers. Just making a pterosaur out of some real lightweight foam with a decent enough drone, and you can see where the head kind of dips, where it's probably getting some it's not catching the draft right, and it's just popping down and then popping back up, trying to correct itself. Again, like, it just, there wasn't enough that I found on pterosaurs that would make me want to say, hey, these are awesome. Honestly, I think I spent too much time talking about it as it is, but that's my pterosaur stories. That's all I got.
That's all I got to say about that.
That's all I've got to say about that. That's much like Bill Clinton.
Yeah.
That was a bad gump. That was more of a Clinton.
Yeah. But so moving on.
Yeah, let's get the hell off that topic.
Since Les has now thoroughly pterosaured us all out.
Yeah.
There is a legend in South Carolina of a thunderbird. It's the description is it's a white thunderbird with orange eyes, and it's been reported by people traveling throughout different parts of the state. And this creature kind of dates back. Now here it does date back to Native American folklore of that region. So I'm going to give you one story here. It's a 2004 sighting. In the summer of 2004, a couple driving towards Myrtle Beach hear a loud flapping sound described as something like laundry that had come off the line and was getting blown around, like a big bed sheet getting hit by gusts of wind, except we were in the woods and there were way too many trees around for laundry to be blowing around. Ooh. Soon a large pterodactyl-like creature was reported flying after their car. After the encounter was over, a grayish, snotty smear was stained over the driver's side of the window. Witnesses reported the creature to be white colored.
Was it semen?
It could have been some semen from the pterodactyl.
I'm sorry, that was crude. I couldn't help myself.
Yeah.
Oh.
So,
anyways, go ahead. So it flew over and relieved itself.
Yeah. Now, you and I have both been to the Myrtle Beach area.
Mm.
There's some good stretches of woods going in and around that area.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
There's also a lot of farmland and very open space.
Right.
For something loud, and think about it, if you're driving on the road, how loud would the flapping sound have to be for you to hear it over your car?
That's exactly what I was thinking. But, I mean, depending on the size, I mean, if this thing is really, really huge and the wings are really cracking and, well, you know how it is sometimes when you snap a towel and, you know what I mean? It gives that real loud crack.
Yeah.
I mean, I've heard some birds. I was out walking my dog the one time, doing some research up in Bigfoot research up in a local area, and there was a dead deer, and there was a bunch of turkey buzzards taken off from it. Now, granted, we were just walking, so obviously I'm going to hear it a lot better. I wasn't driving, but when they took off, it was a thunderous and pop, pop, pop. So, I mean, depending on how fast they were driving, maybe, and depending on how big it is. But I mean, if it's above the car and already going, I wouldn't imagine, because when they first take off is when they have that updraft, and I couldn't imagine if it was already going that it would make such a loud pop. But then again, to play the devil's advocate, did you ever see a dove take off? You hear those damn things trying to get up into the sky for 50 feet. You know what I mean? They're very loud.
Yeah, I mean, turkey taking off from a tree above you can sound like a helicopter hovering.
Oh God, yeah. That's another good point too. Yeah.
But
so I mean, you multiply that size. So I'd say it's a possibility. Let's go with it. Let's go with it's a possibility. I'm not going to write it off because I wasn't there.
Yeah. But it's interesting, like the sound.
Helidactyl, yeah, that's right, helidactyl. Good one.
Now,
go ahead.
It left a grayish snot smear.
Mm-hmm. Back to that, okay.
That's kind of interesting. Could it be, fecal matter? Could it be saliva? That's kind of stuff like physical evidence like that that's so quickly just thrown away, washed away. That's something that should have been tested.
Should have collected that. Yeah, you should have collected it in any way you can without contaminating.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Yeah. But then again, I'm not really one to talk. When I had those fish down at the old farm, I should have been collecting them and sending them off right away, but no, I left it, and then it ended up. Well, although my landlord sent them off, so I mean, I guess it's kind of six in one hand, half a dozen in another. But at least they were tested, but the results came back bullshit. But anyway, point being is sometimes you don't think about it right away. You know what I mean? That's and for somebody who isn't an active researcher or scientific minded, first thing is probably like, shit, I got to wash this off my car. I got to clean this up, So, in hindsight, yeah, it would have been great to have had that collected. But if you're not thinking that way, or you're on vacation, you're trying to get somewhere, you're like, oh, I don't want this on my car when we get there. So you quick go to a car wash and wash it off. You know what I mean? That's the most common thought, I would say.
Yeah, because you don't know what it'll do to your car. It could eat the paint. It could
exactly.
But now,
I've never had a prehistoric load on my car. I wouldn't know what it would do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'd be worried about.
Let me guess. I just lost Les.
No, I just lost you. Can you hear me?
Oh, yeah, I can hear you now.
Every time when I try and make a joke, it freezes up. This is horrible.
Probably a reason. I actually have a button over here that I hit every time you start telling a joke. I'm like, no.
Damn you, Charlesworth.
Yeah. So now we're going to go to 2013. A report surfaced of an encounter 3 years prior, so about 2010, of a similar pterosaur-like creature. It had leather-like wings and was almost as big across as the windshield. I did not get a good look at it because it was dark, but it had almost orangish red eyes and swooped up before it smashed into the windshield of our car. The whole time I was pumping the brake, afraid it was going to smash into the car. I told my parents, but they tried to convince me that it was a bat. But I told them no, it was way too big. Then 1 year later, my dad told me he saw the same thing flying towards the windshield of his car on the same road and the same spot. My brother also saw it in the backyard as he was taking out the trash. Now, that wasn't a story for me. That's just an uncredited eyewitness account.
Right.
Kind of reminds me of the movie The Mothman Prophecies.
In a way, yeah.
Where Deborah Messing or whatever, I think that was her in the movie, sees like that thing flying at the windshield, and then all of a sudden she dies. Like, not right there, but she.
Yeah. No, I know what you're saying.
Yeah. So that kind of like triggered it. Now the thing that interests me is the orange to red eyes. Now in the first story, it doesn't say what time of day it was or evening, but the people do identify it as a white color. So, without knowing if it was day or night, but they point out orange eyes. The second report, from about 2010, points out reddish orange eyes, but this is at night. Okay, flying towards your car, so it's going to be a reflection of the eyes.
Right.
So that's interesting to me. Because the first story is it's above the car. They somehow can see enough of it to see it has orange eyes. Right. This one, it's the things coming at them, the headlights would be hitting it, and the eyes are reflecting orangish red.
Right. That reflects light. Obviously, it's going to do that if it's coming from a car. Am I here?
Yeah, you are now.
Okay, all right. So, like I was saying, if it's a, I apologize, everybody, but I mean, I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's the Comcast issue. I don't have Comcast, so it shouldn't be affecting me. But I was on MetroCast, and now it's Atlantic Broadband. And ever since they did the switch, my connection has been garbage. So I do apologize. But like I was saying, the tapetum lucidium is what creates the eye shine.
Okay.
And if it was flying towards the car, then that makes a lot more sense, because I know owls have that. A lot of mammalian creatures have it, but except for humans, and not a lot of primates have it either. But like I said, owls can produce eye shine. They have that, so could that have been it? Could it have been a big owl? You know what I mean? Some owls get huge, like the great horned owl. They get massive, So if you're not expecting it and you're not used to seeing them, it could definitely have been it. But it said it had leather-like wings and was almost as big across. Well, if it was a darker owl, maybe it could produce the effect that it looked. Sometimes owl have the gray tops with a lighter color underfeather. So maybe it looked almost like it was like a membrane, you know what I mean? And not really, or a stork. You're right, Cleo, stork. What the salt fork, or what, not the crane. What was the one that is always the culprit?
The Sand Hill crane.
Sandhill crane, that's it. Yeah, salt fork crane. Jeez,
Salt fork.
I'm tired. But yeah, I mean, again, there's another situation where it could be a mistaken identity. It was so quick, you know. But with the eye shine, I would probably say owl. I mean, geez, there's so many times I'm driving around at night and you see the eye shine as something flying across the road and this and that. So, yeah, I could say that one is probably chalked up to misidentification. But who's to say? We weren't there. Just our opinion versus theirs.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's, we have to question, some of this stuff, because as researchers and as we all are, generally interested in all this stuff, whether it's something we, are really into or we're just kind of interested in learning more about, you have to question some of these things that kind of stick out for, a reason.
Right.
So now I'm going to take you to 1989. There was a sighting. It was between Greenville and Florence, South Carolina in 1989 by a woman named Susan Wooten. Susan was traveling in Highway 20 to Florence. The sighting happened in a woody, swampy area at 3 p.m. So, okay, we got some time here.
Mm-hmm.
The wingspan is 12 to 15 feet, no feathers, leathery. Oh, God, say
leathery.
It. Leathery.
Leathery, yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting tired now.
Yeah.
And let's see, a head appendage.
A head appendage behind the head.
Yeah, I was getting there.
Okay, I'm just helping you.
I'm going to do my Christopher Walken. You keep it up.
I just wait like Billy Madison or whatever. Today, Junior.
Now, it is also said to have a long tail, distinguishable from its feet. Okay, that right there bothers me.
Yeah, that's...
Long tails have no advantage in flight. In fact, it would cause more drag and trouble flying. Mm-hmm. Even with a 12 to 15 foot wingspan, a long tail is detrimental to flight. Think about birds. They have tail feathers, but none of them have long tails that fly.
And, well, a head appendage behind the head. So it had two heads?
Probably more or less a crest. Something, back in here.
I guess pterodactyl-like, yeah, kind of a crest.
Yeah.
Again, sounds like a stork.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of the storks have that feather crest off the back of the head, which kind of gives it that pterosaur, pterodactyl kind of beaked on both ends look, if you will. You know, the tail. It could have been a stork. When they fly, because of the long, spindly legs, they fold them up. Could have had a snake in its talon. I guess if they're called talons and storks, it could have been gripping a snake, and that created the long tail. Maybe it just caught it and was about ready to eat it. It was spooked. It took off because again, 12 to 15 feet. A lot of these cranes have really large wingspans. I mean, it could be an over-exaggeration, but, because like we always say about with the Bigfoot, with the 7 feet tall, you try and compare it, but it's always usually bigger than what it is.
Yeah, just think about, sit here and think about it. 12 to 15 feet. What's your reference for that?
Yeah, the road?
The width of a road, yeah, the width of the lane you're in. But there are like sea eagles and stuff like that can get 10-foot wingspans.
Yeah, easy. Even the cranes, I think, are up there. 8, 9, 10 feet.
So you definitely have some, known, birds and stuff like that have wingspans close to that. And again, we know averages. We know between this and this. Doesn't mean there isn't one bigger. and 10 of them smaller.
Right.
So
Sandhill crane wingspan is 5'3". Still pretty big when you're not expecting it.
yeah, and if you're driving,
yeah, it's usually an instantaneous. Oh my God, a 5 to 6 foot wingspan is going to look enormous. You're going to have a knee jerk reaction, and again, like we always say, when you see things, that you don't immediately identify or recognize, your brain starts trying to work overtime to make sense of what it's seeing. Sizes, proportions are always exaggerated. So you take a 5 to 6 foot wingspan, and in your moment of panic or rationaling, it's doubled.
mm-hmm.
So it was a 12-foot wingspan. I'm telling you,
Yeah, and something like Cindy brought up here, something with like rope or something tangled, birds get into stuff, they end up, flying away in a panic,
Mm-hmm.
and they're, they have something tangled up in their feet, bailing line, something like that, rope,
Yep.
So definitely, and even like Cleo said, cranes do eat snakes. So again, the snake could be, something that they're seeing along with this. I mean, I think it was one of the alleged more modern Mothman photos. There was what appears to be like some kind of tail or something hanging from it. But then when you look at it, the way it kind of sits, it looks like it might be coming from the talons of whatever this bird was. And you kind of see it tapering off, and it kind of looks like it's probably a snake that it picked up and was flying away with.
Mm-hmm. And Jennifer wants to know, has there ever been any caught on film or on video? None that we were able to find.
Yeah, there's a lot of alleged photos and videos and stuff like that, but none of them.
For the Thunderbird, I mean, I do have this, and take it for what it's worth.
Yeah, but see, that's not, and that's a misnomer. That is an actual representation of a once living species of bird.
A Territorian.
Yeah.
Right.
So
right.
It's used a lot of times as the representation of a thunderbird, or, oh, look, the thunderbirds are real because look, we had one in a museum at one time.
Right.
It's a representation of what the size of one of those things was, not
right.
That I don't even believe it ever lived in the time of man. Not
the Territorns or Territornis, the Greek Territornis or monster bird, is an extinct group of very large bird of prey, and a lot of them are speculated to be more of like a condor or a buzzard or vulture-esque type bird that lived in North and South America from the late Oligocene and late Pliocene era or epoch, whatever you want to call it. They include some of the largest known flying birds. Some of the species of Territorn have been found and have conservative estimates put its wingspans at like 20 feet and up, and it may have been as much as 26 feet, at like maximum length. And the weight was estimated to be around 180 pounds. So that is probably, like you said, Chad, that's probably what the model of what people go to when they try to identify or put some sort of identifier on the Thunderbird.
Mm-hmm.
Now, had that still existed, then, I mean, yeah, I would say that that would be what it is, a living descendant of the Territorn.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some really big turkey buzzards down here. I mean, Virginia is like the home of these gigantic vultures and buzzards and stuff like that. Like some of the biggest ones I've ever seen. And they're all over the place down here. So something, knowing that we do know there are birds out there that have, 10-foot wingspans, it's even a 5 foot wingspan, a 5 to 7 foot wingspan, that's kind of still, could it be a lot of these sightings where it's out of place? That's one thing, like when we were talking with Andy, was out of place animals, not unknown animals, but out of place animals where they should not be where they are. All of a sudden, people are running into them and seeing them, and because it's not a common animal for your area, you may not have a good reference point to identify it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
that could, pose with some of these stories. You're seeing something flying. When you see a bird on the ground, it's very easy to identify.
Mm-hmm.
If it's flying towards you, it's dark out, and it's coming at you at such a speed where you're in fear that it's going to hit your vehicle. It's going to be very hard to get a good description of it.
Right.
An accurate, good description, because like you said, some, the owls have like darker, lighter type patterning and stuff like that. So all of a sudden it looks like it's a wing with no feathers. It looks like one of the membrane type wings that these creatures are said to have.
Right. Do they have fossils of pterosaurs? Oh yeah, there's all kinds of different kind of fossil records of pterosaurs. Even the teraton, there's fossil remains of the teraton too, which could be, a candidate for a thunderbird. That has not gone extinct. I mean, look at the California condor too. I mean, those things are massive. Could it be, like you said, an out of place animal? Could there be a condor here that was being rehabilitated or try to increase the population that escaped or something? I don't know. Do they have tails? Cleo is asking. I think just normal, like, tail feathers, not necessarily a tail. And most Thunderbird reports that we found weren't really of, I don't know, not really a tail. I guess, I don't know. It's all up in the air, really. Most Thunderbird reports that we find are more of a typical bird. I mean, you do have those couple that we talked about that were kind of freakish with what looked like a tail, like a non-bird-like tail. But again, like we said, it could have been a rope, could have been a snake, it could have been something that the person couldn't comprehend immediately. So, yeah. But there's a lot of stories about Thunderbirds. And to Jen's question about the pictures and videos, there are some out there, but most of the pictures are shots of these birds in the sky. And when you're seeing them in person, to the person seeing it or photographing it, I could see how it would be huge to them. But when you're in our shoes and we're looking at these pictures on the internet, it's just a bird in the sky. So it's very, and I think Joey had mentioned lacking a point of reference is critical to accurate size, and that's exactly right. You could send a picture, but without any kind of reference, it's just a picture of a bird. You don't know how big it is. But I'm sure there's more stories out there of Thunderbirds and Thunderbird-like creatures that you guys could look up and find more info on. These are the ones that we found and of the lesser knowns. So, off to the next topic, Chad. Take it away.
So we're going to now, in the beginning of the show, I had said some of these, stories were more on the dinosaur end and some were more towards the paranormal end of the spectrum. So the next flying cryptid we're going to discuss is the Tengu. And the Tengu is a legendary mountain and forest dwelling entity in Japanese folklore. The Tengu was a bird-like creature of the sky and trees. And they're seen as, again, the protectors of the mountains. Mm-hmm. Now, Tengu actually has similarities in other Asian cultures and other, not just Asian cultures, but other world cultures. The Chinese have the Gardu, the Birdman of Hindu lore, which was later adopted by Buddhists as a protective deity. And so the Tengu, they're kind of, again, with Buddhism, they're kind of held as a disruptive demon or harbinger of war. Mm-hmm. And their image is generally softened, however, to one of a protector, with the more modern times, with the Buddhist religion losing a lot of its foothold in these communities and stuff like that. So it's almost becoming the protector of the forest again. Sorry, I had to take a drink. Now, here's the interesting thing. The Tengu has a lot of similarities with the Mothman. Mm-hmm. So, one of the things they say about Tengu are they actually hatch from eggs. They are like birds in that way. And there are stories of travelers coming across these nests filled with giant eggs in remote parts of the mountain. And basically the legend always says that the eggs are said to be enough to feed an entire family, but few would dare to disturb them for fear of the Tengu's wrath. Okay. So this is where it starts to kind of get into the Mothman similarities. Some of the alleged supernatural powers of the Tengu include teleportation, telepathy, premonitions, thought projection, basically where you invade a person's mind and drive them insane. This is one of the things they are alleged to have done. And shape-shifting. Well, if you think back to the Mothman, telepathy is mentioned in the communications with witnesses. The witnesses having premonitions leading up to the Silver Bridge collapse.
Right.
People hearing things, seeing things that were attributed to poltergeist activity. So thought projection. And shape-shifting. That's a little, speculative because, again, reference to understanding what you're looking at. One person may see it as a giant owl-like man, and some people may see it as a man with some owl-like features when you're, thinking of the Mothman. So that one, shape-shifting, could just be a reference of different alleged sightings being combined, and then, Group A saw it like this, Group B sees it like this, so it must be able to it's a shapeshifter. It has to be able to change its shape, because it couldn't possibly be two separate things out there that are undiscovered in one area. So you'd almost have to have, the ability for this creature to shift from one form to another.
Right.
Now, when noticing the disasters that followed some of the Tengu sightings, there seems to be some parallels, worth exploring between the stories of the Tengu and other well-known phenomena. Of course, being the Mothman, which was, made popular in large part by John Keel's books, The Mothman Prophecies. So I found this really interesting, detailed comparison. Not only do the Mothman and Tengu resemble each other in physical appearance, but there are also similarities between the transformation of both creatures underwent from early to later versions. In the case of the Mothman, there were the original eyewitness reports of a bird-like creature that later became more humanoid. Supernatural creature that was popularized by Keel. The later information into the more humanoid, paranormal, and generally more outlandish Mothman championed by Keel conflicts with the early eyewitness reports of a winged creature that could have been more grounded in cryptozoology. And with the Mothman, it seems likely that what started out as a sighting of a possible real animal became something more with Keel's involvement and perhaps further embellished the later eyewitness stories.
Right.
It is also worth noting that in addition to the physical similarities between Keel's Mothman and the humanoid Yabushi Tengu, even some of the supposed supernatural powers later attributed to Mothman are mirrored in the Tengu. The later version of Mothman and Tengu were also considered harbingers of disaster. Although the time frames are different, it seems that at least possible that a similar process could have been at work in the gradual evolution of the Tengu from its animalistic Karasu form to increasingly more humanized Yabushi form of later times. Both Mothman and Tengu started out as winged, mysterious creatures that were more bird-like in the beginning, and both share the current popularity image as a flying winged, distinctly humanoid being. As fantastic current views may seem, could there have been a real animal or core origin of both of these creatures, indeed perhaps even behind many of the other winged humanoid reports around the world?
Good question. Here, before you go on, I do have a picture that I found, and it's kind of a very crude Japanese kind of ink drawing of the creature here. These are supposedly one of them. The one down on all fours is the animalistic karasu, however you pronounce it, and the one that's standing is, like Chad said, the more humanized Yamabushi form of the creature. So these are just the artistic renderings that I had found on the Tengu for all you guys to enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
And also, if you want to learn more about the Mothman and its and see how it correlates to this creature, we did actually interview a man named Jeff Wamsley from Point Pleasant, West Virginia. Super nice guy, super informative. I mean, he's definitely like the encyclopedia of the Mothman events and phenomenon. And I'm going to put a link in the comments section. This is to our one of our archive shows with Jeff Wamsley talking about the Mothman. So you guys can go check that out and enjoy that. So it's funny. Like, the more we talked about the Tengu, it really did hold a lot of similarities to the Mothman. Now, I wonder, looking back through the notes, I don't see really a time frame on the Tengu. Like
Tengu,
when this first... Huh?
Tengu's ancient folklore in Japan.
Oh, is it? All right, so
yeah.
Could it be that the Mothman was... maybe someone learned about this, and that's what started the Mothman? You know, because it is very, very similar, eerily similar.
Well, or could it be more of the it is a real creature.
Mm-hmm.
If you go back to thinking of it as a bird-like creature, not the later evolved flying humanoid type creature.
Right.
What if it is just really birds that we have common, variations of?
Mm-hmm.
Because even in China, the stories of the birds, India with the Hindu culture, the bird people, what if it is a real bird that is just, at one time existed in all these different areas, or the exotic pets. Somebody got one of these birds from Japan, brought it to America. It gets loose, some kind of storm. It gets loose. All of a sudden, it ends up in the Point Pleasant, West Virginia area. People see it. It's not a known bird to them. Linda Scarberry, that woman, every time I ever watched an interview with her, you could see that it bothered her to the day she died, what it was that she saw the original
Absolutely.
site. So could it be something like, an out of place animal? Just, somebody bought one of these birds, smuggled it into the country, it escaped, it's now, moving around. Because think about it.
The Mothman prophecy, or not Mothman prophecy, the Mothman phenomenon. When did that all start? Like 61?
No, 66, because the bridge collapsed in 67. So it was about it was about 13 months, the total time from the first sighting to the bridge collapse was around 13 months.
And and this is going to be horrible because I don't know, my history very well, but when did the Vietnam War end?
73, but our involvement in the Vietnam War ended in 73. I think the war itself ended in 74 or 75.
I'm just trying to think, maybe this was one of those situations where it's a spoil of war, where, maybe people that were stationed, in Japan or something like that during the time of the war got a hold of one of these odd creatures and brought it back, and, didn't want to talk about it, didn't want to let it out that he had taken this creature, and maybe it did get loose, and maybe that's what everybody was seeing. I don't know. This is total, like...
Well, yeah. I mean, you got to think about it. I mean, people, since the end of World War II, we had soldiers stationed in Japan.
Mm-hmm.
My grandfather brought home 2 Japanese samurai swords, poor man samurai swords, and several Japanese battle flags.
Mm-hmm.
Those aren't living things, but he got those back.
No. But that's what I mean. There's a lot of things that people, brought back from war that you wouldn't really think people would bring back.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Yeah, I mean, you could easily, back then, your postal service and your shipping and all that stuff wasn't as regulated as it is now.
Mm-hmm.
You could easily pay somebody on a boat to, a cargo ship or some kind of, military transport ship. Hey, I want you to take this bird back to California. My brother's going to meet you when you guys get there. Just give him it. Here's money. Here's its food. You send it to your brother. Your brother takes it back to where you're from. You come home, it's still there, or it accidentally escaped on the ride home and took off, and now it's living in the
Or in
Point
Pleasant,
Pleasant.
West Virginia. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Or
But
you
then
go out to
again,
feed it and you forget to close the gate, or maybe you didn't lock it properly and it gets out. I mean, hell, look at a lot of these parrots and stuff. They're super intelligent. They know how to open their cages and all that stuff. Maybe the bird's observant and it figures something out and it was able to get out of there. I don't know. Again, these are all kind of from left wing kind of crazy theories. But
well, I think it's just one of those things. Like I said earlier, you got to question the different parts of these stories, and when you're seeing similarities between an ancient, you know, basically medieval folklore of an island that was pretty much left on its own until colonialization with other countries trying to come in, to all of a sudden you're seeing the similarities to a creature that happens in America, you know, that have these similar traits and features, and it could really be just an unknown bird, an unknown variant of a bird. It could be a known species, but with some kind of variation in because of where they live, that change some of the little features to them and make them a little more exotic.
mhm.
And just because we know something here in America doesn't mean if you go to Ghana, they're going to have a reference point for what we know as, this kind of creature or this animal.
Right.
So, there is. Now, here's one of the interesting things. The Blakiston fish owl could be a possible answer to the Tengu stories. It's said to have a wingspan up to 180 centimeters for our friends who use the metric system, and correlate that to the rest of us that use feet. That's 6 foot. So, what are you laughing about?
Metric system.
Well, there are people that watch us in Australia and Europe and stuff like that. I'd like to use their system of measurement so they're not having to do math while listening.
That's very kind of you.
Well, you threw out weight, and poor Andy got all confused because he had to convert it to stones. And
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
I gave him a polite stone number, and he was like, "Wow, that's a lot." And then I was like, "Yeah, well, that's actually about 2 stones and 3 pounds less than what it really is." But so like I was saying, basically about a 6 foot wingspan. But under the right circumstances, some of these owls have been seen and measured to be actually bigger than 6 foot. Again, we're looking at an average wingspan, so there's definitely a chance that some of these are getting 7, 8 foot wingspans. If you live in a more developed area and you're traveling through the mountains to get somewhere else, you may not be familiar with this type of owl. You may not be familiar with owls at all. Because this is a story that dates back, hundreds of years. So you could easily misidentify what people that live in that area. Oh, that's just the fish, this type of owl that we see all the time, and we live around it, so we know what it is. Somebody coming from a port city who has to go into the mountains to deliver some kind of goods, all of a sudden is coming down this path and sees this thing buzz through that area. What was that? Oh, it's some kind of monster. if you don't have a reference point, it's always something scary.
Yeah.
Your brain naturally goes to panic and fear if it can't reference what it's looking at.
Right.
Uh,
That Blakiston's fish owl looks an awful lot like a great horned owl, just like more chunky looking.
that's interesting.
If for anybody who was interested in knowing what it looked like.
Now, one of the problems nowadays is it's only found in Hideko, but it could have had a larger range in the past that we're just not aware of yet. It's a bird. Birds fly. They move in and out of areas where food is good. At one point, they could have been on several of the islands in the island chain.
True.
And
True.
Could have been hunted out. They could have been just lack of food supplies and died off in a few generations.
Much like most animals today, there's so many species that are getting on the endangered species list, and their numbers are dwindling because of habitat loss and whatnot. So yeah, that's the most likely explanation as to why their numbers have dropped or why it's not seen so much anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Japan is also the home of many owls. They have the long-eared owl, which, again, you get an exceptionally large specimen of the long-eared owl. That could have been possibly some of the early accounts of Tengu could have been one of those.
Right.
It's bigger than the normal, normal owl that you're used to, or normal sighting of a bird that you're used to.
Right.
And people, if Buddhism and stuff like that were teaching of the Tengu, because there's a lot of Japanese folklore. There's a lot of the Yurei, which is basically forest ghost in Japan, and stuff like that. There's a very rich spiritual, cultural storytelling system there. So the Tengu is also part of that. So you see a big owl, you're not used to an owl that size. All of a sudden, it has to be the Tengu that you've been told about. So, and also too, a lot of Japanese, you get a lot of crossover with Chinese culture and stuff like that. You have a lot of people traveling back and forth between mainland China and Japan over the years. A lot of it with Buddhism, and I'm not sure if the Shinto religion had spread to China at all, but a lot of that, there's a lot of trade and commerce between the two, so there was a lot of interactions over the generations with the two cultures. So much like a lot of the martial arts systems that came to Japan, they a lot of times have roots in Chinese or Indian systems. Basically the old story is the systems came from India with Buddhist monks to China. From China, they went to Okinawa in Japan, and all these systems developed. So if you look at it with folklore, if we already have a proven case that we can show lineage of, a physical thing, why could, a physical and the systematic and ethical and educational practices and development of theory and technique, the folklore would transfer too.
Right.
A lot of these, martial arts systems and stuff like that have a lot of metaphysical mumbo jumbo involved.
Right.
That come from storytelling. They could turn out the light. They could put a candle out from across the room by moving their hand a certain way. Well, yeah, if you can create enough of a draft, you're going to put the candle out. It's just how it works. but back then it was supernatural power. So I could definitely see some folklore transferring, with these different groups of, trade and stuff like that. But you also have, when you look at other cultures, you have several different cultures that kind of have these Tengu-like creatures, right? You have Horus and, ancient Egyptian, Vishnu, the eagle that's mounted on Vishnu in Hindu mythology.
Mm-hmm.
You have the Lei Gong, the Chinese god of thunder. Is depicted as a bird man-like creature. You have things like the griffin, harpies, valkyries. They're all kind of depicted with wings. More on the humanoid side, but they're always depicted as humans with wings. Then you also get into other cryptids like the Owl Man, which I think one of these days we should probably cover.
It keeps popping up,
Yeah.
throughout the different shows we do.
Yeah. I mean, so you have some different cultural versions of these Tengu or Mothman, Owlman, different flying humanoids, type creatures, or, larger than normal bird-like creatures that have interactions with humans.
Yeah. But it goes to show, too, there's always, every culture has its different variation of the same thing, which kind of, in a way, makes me feel there's more truth to it.
Mm-hmm.
But then again, Joey points out, the metaphorical traditional stories are dear to many cultures. Is it just that? Is it just traditional stories and not really based off of a true physical thing? Or is it the opposite? You know what I mean? Like, where do these stories come from? Is it just like, there's storytellers. There's storytellers all throughout history. Is it some poetic person that started this all? And like, you see a bird, they're inspired by the bird, and they try and relate it somehow to a human attribute or a human condition or something like that, where they're like, all right, well, let's just say somebody's like really graceful or whatever, or they the way they move almost looks like they could fly. So, this bird is, it's this and that. So then they link it, the bird and the person, and well, they have then they gave them the face of this bird, and you know what I mean. Just, I'm obviously not that poetic, but you know what I mean. You get the gist of what I'm saying. Is somebody would take similarities, similar characteristics or attributes, and fuse them together to create this person. Well, this bird has this, and people dance. So what in nature is similar or as graceful? Well, this bird has graceful movements. So this god of dance has this bird's head. It's not related to a physical creature or an actual physical being. It's just the similarities or the traits that are similar, and that's why they give them this look or this whatever.
Yeah,
like
that explains appearance, but I think everybody's missing one of the key things here. You don't need a name or a word for something that doesn't exist.
What do you mean?
Well, yeah, appearance could be a conglomeration of things. The reference point of how this person moves, and like you were saying, but you don't need a name for things that don't exist.
Right.
So,
but Go ahead. Go ahead.
So these names and stuff like that, and stories that are attributed to these names, yes, could be fiction. But like when you're looking at words in a language that mean certain things that don't are only in the name of this thing and this creature, there'd be no reason to have a name for a creature that does not have some basis in reality.
Right.
Or at one time was around.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
No, Gary has a good point there. You know, like a person, like your eyes don't lie. That's true. Like if you see something, you see something. But again, there's always the misidentification. Uh, you know, but I guess I think we're getting lost here in the breakdown. Uh, there's a lot of similarities in different cultures. Are they religious based? I don't know. Uh, but I don't know. I don't even know how to. I don't even know what I'm trying to explain here. Do these mythological or religious figures have anything to do with real life? I don't know. It's interesting that there are so many similarities around the world. Like you said, you know, an unknown creature doesn't have to have a name, but the point is, why are all these cultures having things that are so similar? And a lot of these things date back to times where communication between these cultures wasn't that prevalent or that easy, you know. So is there some sort of validity that, you know, there's creatures like this all over the world? I don't know. Are they paranormal? Like, are they on a different plane than we are? I don't know that either. But there seems to be a lot of things happening that people can't explain. And again, Gary, kind of to go along with what you're saying is you can't even trust your eyes a lot of times because, like we talked about before, with misidentifying, lack of reference points, just the heat of the moment. When you're seeing something, because most times, not every time, but most times when a person has a sighting, it's extremely quick, and you don't have a lot of time to react. So, is it misidentification? Is it just skewed point of perspective? I don't know. But you have those situations where people observe. Let's just say Bigfoot. There's a lot of people that say they've sat and watched families of Bigfoot interact for hours, and they habituate them, and they go and they sit with them all the time, or they see this or they say that. Well, that's that. If they are true, well then your eyes aren't going to lie, because obviously, if you're sitting with a group of these creatures, you're seeing it. Yeah, peyote, opium, hashish, and other stuff. Cleo, yeah, that's true. A lot of Native American and Oriental cultures did experiment with mind-altering drugs, and maybe that's where a lot of these things come from, is an altered state of mind. But yet, again, there's a lot of people that aren't under the influence of anything that see stuff quite regularly. Is it another underlying mental condition? I don't know. That I guess is kind of why we're all here. Is we're trying to find the truth. We're seeking the truth, and until we have a physical specimen laid out in front of the world to see, we're all still seeking. So that's about it. And it is now 10:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have hit our 2-hour mark. And I think that's all she wrote. What do you say, partner?
Yeah, that's good. I mean, I think we talked about several, different stories, different types, and you know, it's one of those things where I think if if we were out there and saw this, you know, driving through South Carolina, if you're out there on the road and you see this large pterodactyl like creature swoop down in front of your car, nobody's ever going to change your mind that that isn't what you saw. Yeah, I think it's experience a lot of times. And my whole thing is, I think sometimes it's, out of place animals that are just being kind of misidentified because of not having a good point of reference.
Right.
But, some of these stories, I like to think there's a plesiosaur in Loch Ness. I'm willing to accept that dinosaurs could possibly have lived past the, extinction point in some shape, way, or form.
Well, there's the whole thing for the, a whole other world within our planet, where dinosaurs live. But there's again, they're all theories, and I'm with you though. I would love to think that dinosaurs still exist. I would love to think that a Bigfoot exists. I feel there's a lot of conclusive evidence, but again, I haven't seen one.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, I think there's a lot of evidence. To me, a lot of the cases we looked at tonight, just kind of the evidence points to me of a known out of place type animal.
Right.
Because nobody has a good, a lot of the descriptions are just kind of old school references of misidentified features of pterosaurs, stuff like that. So, I just think sometimes it is some stuff that is like, honestly, I saw a deer the other day driving home and I looked at my wife and I said, "Oh my God, is that a kangaroo?" It was just the way the deer, like the way it was standing, how large its torso was, and the way its head was because of the way it was standing. I looked at it as I'm driving doing 70. I looked at it and I'm like, "Oh my God, is that a kangaroo?" I've seen 1,000,000+ deer in my lifetime. For some reason, this one doe was a kangaroo in my head when I saw it. Like I said, I've seen kangaroo and I've seen deer. That one deer, for some reason, looked like a kangaroo as I was driving by it at 70 miles per hour.
Right.
Now, if it wouldn't have been for my wife sitting in the passenger side of the car, I saw a kangaroo today driving down the road. What do you mean you saw a kangaroo? We don't have kangaroos. Well, maybe one got lost. One escaped from some zoo or something like that, or somebody had one as a pet and it broke out. And,
Right. Hey, I saw an emu, so don't feel bad. We're both seeing Australian creatures.
Well, yeah, but you saw that emu, and then I shared the news story a couple days later where not too far from where you were, people saw them too.
Right.
It was on WNEP that there was actually escaped ones that were roaming around the woods.
Yeah, well, on that note, I think we should wrap her up.
Yep.
Thank you, as always, everyone, for tuning in and joining us on yet another adventure here on Explorers Seekers of the Truth show. We do have some investigations lined up for this summer, so hopefully we get to embark on those journeys and find some more stuff that we can bring to you all. But until then, we'll keep trying to plug away at our weekly discussions, and we hope you all come back and join us. So thanks again, Chad.
Yep. Thank you, everybody. I hope you have a good, safe weekend, and talk to you next week.
All right. Good night, everyone.